Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started with our next panels. Fireside with the Gulas. So our moderator is Chris Cleary, National President of the MCPA. We have Ron Gula, co-founder of Tenable, Air Force veteran and MCPA advisor. We also have Cyndi Gula, Managing Director and co-founder of Gula Tech Adventures. Thank you.
All right, so for the Gulas. First of all, thank you for being here. So, like I was mentioning in one of the other panels, there's probably no such thing as 2 degrees of separation inside of this community. The 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon, you would never get past 3, maybe. I'm going to argue that everybody in this room is connected by probably one other person. And I would go for the community writ large. And when you expand the community to include venture capital, the sort of things you're doing it. So Ron, our 1 degree of separation was I also started one of my tech jobs was at Tenable, working for Ron. Had the opportunity to go ring the bell on the NASDAQ when we went public with that. That, for those of you who get the opportunity,
it's a lot like the bell on the ship.
With considerably more people being happy when that bell got rung than the ship's bell that got rung. So Ron is sort of a entrepreneur at heart, with the starting of, and Cyndi, I'm sorry, the team that created Tenable. And since then has gone on to do other things with Gula Tech. This will be a flowing conversation. And I think as we started it, because of your background, the things that you've done, most recently was RSA. We were at RSA last week. There's a million tech out there. It's a carnival of lights and sounds and parties and alcohol consumption.
It was fun.
It was fun. So first, it's a 2-part question. First of all, please just give us a little bit of background on, how you got to where you are. And then begin to start with, and seeing where the market's going, the things that you're interested in, and we'll play off of that. Cyndi, we'll start with Cyndi.
Oh, wow, that's great. So just to clarify, anybody questioning, yes, we are voluntarily related. We are not brother and sister, so we did choose to be related. Actually, I met Ron on a blind date, and I asked him what he did, and he said, I could tell you, but I'd have to kill you. And we were in Syracuse, New York.
I said that.
And he looks Italian, so I said, what, are you in the mob? And he said, no, I work at the NSA. I said, what's that? And he goes, no such agency. And I'm like, and what's that? And he goes, the National Security Agency. I'm like, and do you want a second date? Because this is not going well. And my degree is I'm an engineer. I'm a materials engineer. So from a point of view, getting to the right solution for the problem is the way I operate. Now, when I met Ron and we decided to start our first business, our company, Ron came home and said, I got an idea for a company. And I said, well, better now than any other time. And if you don't, you'll always regret it. And so from that standpoint, we got an accountant, we got a lawyer. I said, all those business people were at school with me, still managed to pass, so it can't be that hard because I knew what I had to pass. And so we started our first company.
Yes, I was in the right place at the right time. Mid-'90s, I had just read The Cuckoo's Egg. I'm like, I can find these people. I was in the Air Force. I eventually got to go work at the NSA. This is well before Cyber Command. This was the 90s. Nobody said cyber, right? It was information operations and that kind of stuff. So got to work on a lot of interesting things. Got to hack the offensive people, got to hack the DoD, got to do a bunch of really cool things. But that set me up to do cyber for the last 30 years or so. So after that, did a bunch of startups with Cyndi and worked together at Tenable, and now for the last 5 years we've been doing Gula Tech Adventures, which basically puts our own money to startups. We tend to skew towards IC founders, DoD founders, ex-military founders, and we also have a foundation where we do a lot of philanthropy, and we kind of help people in cyber attract people who don't look like old white dudes like us, to this business and stuff like that. And also, all right, look like me, whatever, Italians apparently, right? So, but we're trying to put our money where our mouth is in our time with efforts across the board, including MCPA. So yes, happy to be here.
So thank you for that. So again, let's talk about where, from your perspective, there's so many technology. All right, so go to RSA, right? And when those conferences, every year there's some buzzword. The last 2, of course, this year it was all AI. Last year it was all zero trust. You still see some fall over zero trust. So there's some kind of topic ideas. But as people that put venture into this space, what kind of trends, technology, things you think are snake oil salesmen, things that you think are real, and then we'll go talk about AI for a second.
Yeah. So I'm going to answer a question you didn't ask, which I'll take a tip from that last panel, which looked like they were sitting on a boat, weren't they? They were all really kind of close. Look, I'm not in favor of another separate command, right? We don't have a separate command for healthcare people. We don't have a separate command for lawyers, right? We don't have a separate command, but we take those professions and we put them on a platter, but we don't do it with cyber. And we suffer on the offensive side recruiting people. We suffer on the defensive side trying to get people to do that. And so I really think we need to do more for cyber to make it a profession, right? So now we go to RSA, what do you see? You see 1,000 vendors, right? We walk the floor, you know, we have to take a break. I mean, you can't walk the RSA floor. It's like combat. You're just
It's exhausting.
dodging
Yeah.
people and stuff like that. It's also mentally exhausting because cyber is so many, many different things. You have to look at a booth. People who spend really, really good time designing a booth, $50,000 for a booth at RSA. I'm looking at it. What does it do?
We do security.
Yeah, we literally walk by a booth and we're like, we do security. I'm like, oh, apparently we're done. Right? We found the company that's going to do all security, you know, for everybody. And that's the problem with our industry, right? Cyber is so complex, we are not professionalized, right? So now, here comes AI. And I was jokingly called the RSA conference the RSAI conference, right? And it was really, really well done. Almost everybody that was there had some sort of AI use case in their cyber widget, their cyber platform, that sort of thing.
So one of the other things that we try to do is we try to make sure that you're solving a problem and not looking for a problem. And a lot of times, that's what people do. They come up with a solution and then look for a problem. And it's really not hard in cyber to find the problem. What are you having problem with? But you know what, look outside of our industry or our jobs. Look at the public. What is the public struggling with? And to, you know, solving those real problems and disrupting maybe the way certain people might already think with security beliefs that are not actually true. So there's a lot of open space to talk, but I don't think we're saying the right words. So for me, I get asked, Cyndi, how do we get more women in cyber? I said, stop calling it cyber, because you're not telling me why we're doing any of this. You're not telling me why it's important in order to do the things you're instructing me to do as far as MFA and things. I like to take the medical field pivoted to healthcare. And when the medical field pivoted to healthcare, everybody says, oh yeah, I do have a personal responsibility for my own health. So let me do things. Let me have a Fitbit. Let me eat better. Let me do these things so it's not just the doctor's problem when I have a problem with my body that they have to fix it. But that's the way we treat cyber, and that's how we treat the digital world today. So if we say, hey, you know what? Let's pivot it to data care and tell people why. I can say to a 15-year-old, do you have data on your phone? And they say, yes. I said, do you have a sense of privacy? They're like, no, I have no sense of privacy. But I say, do you want your parents to read your text? They're like, oh, no. So the words do matter and how we speak to people with respect to why we're doing everything. And so with data care, somebody will say, well, what can I do to protect my own data? Baby steps, small things. You can do MFA, you can reset, whether it works or not, according to Mudge. Update your software. So there's many things, but once we get people to understand why we're doing things, the telling them the what we're doing is so much easier, and it invites people into the industry versus scaring them. The sky is falling, you're going to fight China. Oh, everything's bad and hard. That's what we say when we talk about cyber sometimes the way we do.
And along those lines, the cyber industry has layers and layers of defenses against getting new people into the business, right? We have our own language, we have our own technology. If you didn't come through the modem to the virtualization to the Starlink, right? You're somehow late to the party. Whereas you look at what AI has done, AI has been like wide open to everybody. Like AI is the fastest growing thing out there. They have done a much better job at recruiting people to their industry. And to Cyndi's point, if you're going to be in AI, you have to take care of the data. You have to do that. And people who are doing AI are not doing cyber.
So, like I said, this conversation was going to go a lot of different places. I'm already thinking about a whole other path to take this down. So Cyndi, playing off something that you just said, but thinking about the audience that's kind of the target audience for this mission is the Military Cyber Professional Association. And Ron, you and I have had this conversation a couple different times in a couple different ways. And
Usually with cigars and bourbon.
Usually with cigars and bourbon, which is why I love going over Ron's house, because I can't do that at my house. The cigars, the bourbon I can drink in my house. From an investor standpoint, things that are worthy of investment, when you look at the Department of Defense, and through many conversations, you sort of know where I am for what the Department of Defense is fundamentally designed to do. Right? There's lots of things that underpinned what the mission is, but its ultimate end state is either delivery of lethality or the protection of some adversary delivering some form of lethality, whether it be a kinetic, non-kinetic, or through the spectrum. Well, when you look at sort of, let's say, manufacturing of munitions, well, there are stockpiles of those because the military needs those, but we might never use them either, but there's an investment to do those things. And the companies that get into that space can see, well, look, this is a space to get into. I know the military is going to buy this stuff. They're consumables, yada, yada, yada. But from a willing to give capital venture into something, and if somebody comes to you and says, look, I've got this great idea to build a cyber weapon. Well, there are no secrets that we do these things anymore, right? It's a kind of in a knowledge space. How we do those things, of course, is behind the green door. But the fact that we do them is no longer a secret. So how do the young minds, and we'll get to the entrepreneurial nature of maybe we're the military versus the people that are not in the military, how would they approach coming to you with a capability that did something like that when you know and you're looking at just the return on value? Yeah, I got it. The government still hasn't pushed the I believe buddy and I'm ready to buy these things at scale. Go to Mantech or Leidos or, Lockheed.
Yeah, so we're in one company called Bolden. And basically what they do is, I can't really talk about it, right? It's a capability. But the point was that they wanted to sell to the various people who do offense, as a product vendor, right? Absolutely a lot of antibodies for buying that, right? People want to buy capabilities that are supported by teams, supported by butts and seats, all the negative kind of things you can say about the Beltway bands. No, it's great to deliver a capability, but I'll tell you another story. I had certain people deliver the same exact thing Tenable delivered. We could sell it as a product, as a SaaS, and could do all that kind of stuff. Yet, when you sell it through typical government procurement, it becomes 5 times more complex, 5 times more bureaucratic. So one of the things that's hurting ourselves on the offensive side is we're still building bespoke tools, and we're not using the power of, call it innovation, Silicon Valley, entrepreneurship, to come up with cool ways to solve these problems. So I'm very much in favor of getting that private sector involved with this thing because they're very, very much fighting that. First of all, private sector fights the fight every day. They don't get enough credit for defending against Russia and China, but they can stop it, they can hack them back. Yeah.
And taking a little bit off of the cyber force conversation, I'm fundamentally against the cyber force because everybody needs cyber for, to that extent. It would seem, I don't know, kind of more logical to me that in your 4th year, you take all the people from all the different commands, or, the different service schools and things like that, and you take the ones that have the highest acuity for cyber, and you take them and give them what's equivalent to a master's in cybersecurity, and then send them back to their command so that it's spread out and from a point of view, everybody's speaking the same language, so that you can have cross communication. Maybe it comes from Cyber Command, maybe it comes whatever, but everybody at that point is now speaking the same language. It's very similar to lawyers. I mean, the lawyers have their lawyer speak, but there was a way to elevate without taking it from everyone and keep it in one, because I do believe it needs to be across everything. But what I love, and some people in this room probably are going to hate me saying this, is I love how, no, not you, how the services are training the workforce for commercial, because I love hiring vets. I love hiring the people who have done the cyber mission inside, because that mission never goes away. And it is so infectious to people who have never had that mission that it's so much easier for me to put somebody who's in the commercial world next to somebody who's coming out of the military, and it's infectious, and it's just that mission. And so, I constantly get, how do we hire more vets? I'm like, just send them my way. I mean, I absolutely think that there's something there So it's almost like you guys are doing the training for the commercial side. So there is a better way, or I think there's should be an innovative way to keep more cyber people in the services.
And from the workforce development standpoint, I've heard other commanders in the cyberspace say, we understand the deal that we make with a young sailor, airman, soldier, Marine, Guardian, to say, look, we're going to bring you in, we're going to start you from zero, and we're going to give you 4 to 6 years of experience, to which point you can go do something with that. And we acknowledge we're going to lose a bunch of them or to go do the things because, to your point, I would admit, military trained, there's some things that come along with bringing in a vet, discipline and follow orders and show up on time for the most part, and things like that. But from an entrepreneurial standpoint, we were talking about this. The other thing that some people in the room may take offense to this, when you track through a military career, you are sort of conditioned that you wait in line, the next job opens up, you do the right thing, you get to the next job, and there's a very sort of linear, you can plot your career out to get from here to there. And there's certain things that take you off your career, and maybe you say, I'm never going to make 06 because I wanted to go do something that the community didn't recognize. But based on that, I think that also builds in sort of a maybe non-entrepreneurial spirit to say, look, there's a very linear way that this world works. So when you're looking at working with military people, where do you see that as something that you consider? Outside of their great employees, what is it to be an entrepreneur in this space?
Yeah, so the big thing I always like to tell people when they come out of the service, and I've done a lot of whispering to various people retiring from all levels of the military, is that, look, you really don't have any top cover when you come out. Like, unless you're like the president, right? Everybody in the DoD is kind of working for somebody else. And when you leave, you can make your own rules, right? You can work with your wife, you can work with your father, you can work with a son, you can do whatever you want to start your business. You can't do that in the military. So when you leave, there's like all these things you can do. You can make up your own adventure, right? But the second thing is, you might work at a squadron, you might work at a unit, but when you start a business, that business is like a legal entity. It's gonna exist when you leave. And this is one of the hardest things I've had with military folks to start. Like, when you start a company, it's not you. A lot of people kind of view that the company and their entrepreneur, when they come out of the service, that it's them, it's one and the same. The founder is the company. And I kind of felt like this when we did our first company, but you quickly realize that businesses are different than the people. And you can be a great entrepreneur, you can have a great idea working in the government, you can have a great idea for something for your family, but if you're gonna start a business, that business is separate from you. And I think the last thing I usually talk about with military folks is that, look, you're defending capitalism right now. And when you come onto this side, it's time to partake in capitalism. And a lot of people feel a little bit of guilt when maybe they have members of the unit still serving. Maybe they do a little bit of guilt that they became an entrepreneur and they're somehow making a lot more money. The responsibility is more for successful entrepreneurs, right? If you can reverse engineer Chinese malware, you should be able to reverse engineer a SOC engineer getting really, really good pay and benefits if your company's really, really good well. And there's a lot of benefits there.
And it's likely that you have suffered through the very thing that somebody else needs for you to solve. And taking that outside of the military and producing that and creating that, it's likely not just the military and your job is going to need that, it's likely the commercial side is going to need it as well. So especially in cyber, as compared to other industries, there is a lot of dual use because the commercial is defending the country almost as much as military.
But Ron, to your point, there is a harsh reality there. If you're going to give somebody venture, there's there's expectation of these. Some make it, some don't, right? But at the end of the day, is that at some point there's a return. And I remember even when I was working at Tenable and doing the BD stuff for Tenable, I was making a joke with the team. And I said, guys, what is it that we do here? Oh, we sell security software. No, what is it we do here? Oh, we develop. I said, no, what we do here is we find people with money and we make that money our money, right? Particularly when you become a publicly traded entity, right? That's a really important part of it. You could go back so far as to say, well, what does the military do? Well, we're fundamentally designed around delivering lethality. I mean, it doesn't really sound great, but that's at the end of the day what it is. And sometimes the harsh realities of what these organizations are and what they do is there a little bit of a, I don't want to call it a bitter pill to swallow, but for the people who are thinking about being entrepreneurial in nature, is there has to be some return.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing you got to realize, if you're going to be an entrepreneur and you're going to start a company, if you, first of all, if you can do a business without raising venture capital, do that. If you can go and talk to a customer and convince them to give you money and you're going to go build a product, do that, right? You should only raise venture capital if you need to solve a problem. But as soon as you raise venture capital, you're tied at the hip. You now have somebody who's going to be constantly like, so, how was last quarter? You said you were going to do this, right? And the thing is, it's not just like maybe the mob reference, right? It's like, look, we're involved in about 40 different cyber companies. We see a lot of things. If I got 5 companies that all of a sudden get hit by a new compliance regulations, what am I going to tell the other 35 companies? And when we go and talk to those other companies, they're looking at us strange, like, oh, why would you know this kind of stuff? It's like, we've lived these kind of things. So when you get venture capital, you also take on the burden of like having to respond to the experience from the people who are investing with. The last thing, man, a lot of people have great, successful careers in the military, and they go out and they want to start a company. We say no to like 99% of the companies we get pitches from, including military folks, which is tough. And a lot of times it's the first time they've had kind of a quote unquote failure. But at least we try to leave them with a parting gift of like, look, if you went in this direction, you might be a little bit better. But like the last thing we want to do right now is invest in an AI company where there's 100 other people doing the same exact thing. You'd be surprised how many people are leaving the military, starting an AI company, where I can almost show you the deck that I saw before and after before they gave it to me.
So to have a little bit of fun with this, because the other part of our prep conversation went down. So Ron and Cyndi are sci-fi fanatics. If you've been over their house, whether it's the Star Wars figures or the role playing, he cheated at this tank game that he set me up on. That I think
Chris lost.
He's a Navy guy.
Yeah, but he changed the rules as we were playing it and whatever. So, but we were talking about the science fiction side of things, and there's science fiction and there's fantasy. Fantasy is, wizards and dragons and magic. Science fiction is somewhat based in reality. And a lot of things, and we were using the Star Trek, Star Wars, Dune sort of line of reasoning that we've seen things in movies made in the 70s that have ultimately come to exist, right? Particularly Star Trek, right? The doors that open and the communicators and all that stuff. Do you think that a lot of this space, it's just, again, the creativity of what the art of the possible is? You hook somebody with an idea and to say, hey, I showed it to you in Hollywood magic. Go make that real.
Well, there's definitely that, but I guess I'm going to take your comment just a little bit more, because one thing that I liked about Star Trek, and what Star Trek did really well, is they didn't say, Siri, what is it? They didn't say Alexa. They said computer, do this for me. They kept the computer very much a tool and not a friend. Then data comes along, but from a standpoint.
Use your line, with the line that I wrote down.
And so if you really think about it, and you think of all the AI that kind of goes bad, Hail, Colossus, Joshua, they're all named. So no good things comes from a named AI. So from a standpoint, take that to heart and keep that too.
So Data is one of the good ones because he wants to be more human, right? Data's not going to take over the enterprise and enslave us all, right? Whereas I actually, when we were at RSA, I kind of said, if you're investing in AI, just kind of swear to, don't invest in something that's going to harm the American public. And it's hard when you think about TikTok and AI and our rights to privacy. Like, what is right and wrong?
Well, and the AI question, so having taken a bunch of AI meetings when I was out at RSA as well, we were, flying out to RSA, I was watching the Oppenheimer movie. And I think one of the things that the Oppenheimer movie at least hinted at was the can we versus should we sort of argument of, hey, we can do this thing, should we do this thing, what are the use cases? And that was an interesting debate point. I think there's a lot of similarities that could be thought through in AI. And then we were talking, the other AI question we were saying is, okay, well, is all AI created equally? Will AI ultimately have an IQ? Like somebody made an AI with an IQ of 160 and somebody has an AI with an IQ of 80. And I think you were using, well, it's all compute power. Like a cell phone won't be as smart as the cloud. Could you unpack that a little bit? Because that was a really interesting.
So, I mean, we're getting, if you guys have seen my YouTube channel, I do a lot of videos in 3D, and that's all like AI based. Literally, I'm just typing into the prompt and I'm getting 3D people talking, having a conversation like this and whatnot. So what I tell people is that, look, I'm not a trained animator, but I can make stuff that's almost like Pixar quality. It looks like we're going to be able to do that in cyber. Like one of the big things from RSA was that, cyber jobs that suck, like reading EULAs, like doing level 1 SOC alert. AI can really help a lot of that stuff, and that's going to be good for our industry. It's going to help us attract people right now. But the thing that really, really hurts, this gets into the big AI, smart AI, is like most people can't describe how the internet works. Or let's pick a website, southwest.com. Show me where it's at, how it works, how the algorithm works. Whatever. Now throw AI into that. Tell me where the data came from. We're getting pitches from companies that are doing like GRC for AI generative compliance. The charts they have are like, there's like 10 layers you have to think about from where the data comes from and where the data is hosted and how it's trained and whose model you're looking at and then who has access to this stuff and who has access to, it's insane. And most people just think of it as like an app and stuff like that. So I think AI is going to be a big opportunity, but it's still a lot more complex than people realize.
Yeah, and a lot of things, the common conversation, is this AI for security or is this security for AI? And so, at the RSA floor, they were both out there, and both of them are kind of terrifying when you really think of the level, the depth, and how much we have to deal with.
So we got 2 minutes left, and before it's over, I wanted to open it up to the audience. Does anybody in the audience have a question for the Gulas?
Nobody except him.
Oh, here we go.
So is AI going to remove? So, well, for me personally on the animation side, absolutely. There's some amazing technology that allows me to do some stuff. I used to have to do everything manually, take a long time. AI can do a lot of automated things for you, so there's the friction out of that. On the cyber side, it's tough because as an expert, I can poke holes in the results of most AI-based stuff, but I'd rather have an 80% answer for basically free than try to wait to hire an expert to get the 100% answer.
So do you think that human combined with the AI is the way to have?
Absolutely. Human combined with AI is always going to win. Yeah.
All right, and maybe one more question. Yeah, what's going on?
It's the RF hacking guys.
It is. All right, well, with that, thank you to the Gulas. I really appreciate Ron and Cyndi. This has been awesome.
Thank you.
We'll see you next year.
All right.
Yeah.
Good deal.
Yeah.